And with that, I welcome you to the world of syntactic development. My name is Amira Medina, and I hope you learned something new today. For today's class, our agendas are as follows. First, we will be introduced to syntactic development as well as a few linguistic scholars involved in its growth. And we will also be answering the question, how do children acquire the syntactic structure of a language? We will then be diving deep into the two main stages of syntactic development, the first one being the stages of utterance length, and the second one being the stages and development of transformations. We will also be dealing with expression negation and its stages, which refers to how children say no and how the way they say no evolves the more that they improve. Followed by how children structure their questions, as discussed in the topic of interrogatives or question formation and its stages. So, here we will get to witness how children form their questions and how they eventually learn how to use the proper structure when it comes to using the WH questions and so on and so forth, as well as the application of rising intonation. We will also be defining the grammar module and mental dictionary in correlation to children's syntactic development. And last but not the least, at the very last of this report, will be the citation of references used in order to make this presentation possible. Quite exciting, isn't it? Let me introduce you to syntactic development. So, what defines us as human beings and sets us apart from our other primate relatives is our ability to use and pass on language. We are capable of maintaining the conventions of a particular language across different generations within a speech community, which has left many developmental psycholinguists intrigued with how children acquire the syntactic structure of a language. After all, adults only speak in concrete and particular words and expressions instead of abstract syntactic categories and schemas, which begs this big question. How do children acquire the syntactic structure of a language? Let's find out. The answer to this question might already be familiar to you. As supported by Chomsky and later by Pinker and several other linguistic scholars, innateness hypothesis is considered to be the most widely accepted answer. This claims that children already possess abstract syntactic structures as a part of their innate language faculty, which means that children do not need to learn or construct these abstract syntactic structures at all. It's already an inborn ability. It doesn't end there. In 1974, Stork and Widdowson also argued that despite their having different languages in the world, all human beings have the same ease of learning their native languages regardless of what it is. So, a native Filipino speaker or a native speaker of, let's say, Nihongo, could learn their native language with the same ease even if they speak completely different language from completely different parts of the world. Interesting, isn't it? And in 1993, Dr. Joseph Kess stated that there is no failure in learning any native language in children, and that before the age of 5, they already learn a large aspect of the language. Even if babies learn how to speak at different paces, there are tons of similarities between them. For example, majority of them learn how to form words and sentences in a similar order, where they start with single syllables and eventually learning how to use things like tense and proper word order. So let us define exactly what syntactic development is. So, the process of a child coming from knowing no language to being able to form cohesive sentences with connection to grammatical rules is the very essence of syntactic development. So, to put it simply, syntax involves the rules used in combining words in order for us to construct sentences, and the ways in how children adopt these rules is referred to as syntactic development. Through the use of MLU, or mean length of utterance, The average length of a child's sentence or extent of syntactic development is measured, which increases the more a child grows up. Children are believed to automatically develop syntactic rules without the need of explicit instruction. So, children just learn by simply listening to the way others speak around them. Based on Jean Berko Gleason's work titled The Development of Language, there are 5 stages of syntactic development identified in 1973 by Roger Brown. Now let's dive deep into the 2 main stages of syntactic development. The first stage being stages in utterance length. Sometimes the term holophrastic is used, which refers to a single form that functions as a phrase or sentence to describe an utterance that could be analyzed as a word, phrase, or sentence. Children may extend their usage of these holophrastic utterances outside of just naming objects. But this remains very different from adult utterances because at this stage, children only use language for social purposes. For example, when they're trying to convey their feelings or express their ideas. Additionally, at around 10 months old, babies begin to utter kind of recognizable words. Example of these include word like vocalizations that do not correlate well with words in the local language, which may be repeatedly used by babies to express particular emotional stages. For example, to express feelings of pleasure, babies may make noises like "eji," or in order to express discomfort and annoyance, they may say "ma ma ma," something like that. Additionally, young children also often practice underextensions and overextensions that develop and change the more that they age, which refers to using words that may be too narrow or too broad. For example, they may use the word dog to refer to lambs, cats, cows, and dogs, or the word teddy being a word that they only use for one specific toy bear. We will dive even deeper in that subject later on. So, for this one word stage, which occurs at 12 to 18 months, also called holophrasic stage, it consists of single word utterances. Within a few months, it can develop into 2 word combinations, and this is the period where speech is mostly in single terms and it's mostly used to indicate names. For example, to refer to everyday objects like milk and cat, or to indicate names like mama or doggy or kitty, as well as certain actions and demands, no, or more. However, Cattell in 2002 states that it isn't until real 2 word utterances begin that we can say syntactic constructions have started to form. He adds that until you have 2 words to rub together, then there isn't any syntax, because syntax is about the relationship between words in a sentence. But some linguists have challenged this by claiming that single word utterances are really holophrastic sentences, which means that even a single word without a connection to any other words or not followed by any other words in the sentence can express a full thought or a full sentence, just like the word no. Moving on to the 2 word stage that occurs at 18 to 20 months. At around 2 years old, a variety of combinations start to appear. So, terms like baby chair, mommy cat, cat bad, and mini sentences with simple semantic relations occur during children's speech. And not only are they able to produce speech, but they are now able to comprehend feedback that they receive, which confirms that whether or not the utterance that they did have been a success or a failure in the interaction. The child begins to connect words together and form simple reduced sentences with the aid of the early multi word stage. And at this stage, they have an average of around 50 learned words. However, despite not knowing the meaning of these words, they begin to reproduce rote learned structures. Now they are able to use a variety of semantic relations during this stage. The following are examples. They can now combine agent plus action, action plus agent, action plus locative, and so on and so forth, as you can see on the screen. New words are assigned to the different word classes. Grammatical formatives or functional categories seem to be either absent or rarely used. For example, in English, children omit determiners, auxiliaries, and complementizers. For example, baby talking, mommy thrown it, bunny broken, want go out. And in yes or no questions, they are often signaled only by the use of intonation at EMWS. Fraser, water? No, eat? However, despite this word order not being in any way close to adult grammar, the grammar in this stage is relatively consistent because they have better control over their intonation patterns. And keep in mind, even if the grammar is very simple, it does not have any chaotic structure, meaning it is simple but effective and it doesn't cause any chaos. Let us define pivot grammar. In psychology, pivot grammar is the structure behind two word phrases often used by children. This is a part of the stage 2 language development, which is then followed by stage 3 as a child grows their vocabulary and practices a more accepted structure of sentences instead of only using two word utterances. Martin Brain's analysis of language in infant suggests that the two word utterances spoken by a child are not entirely based upon the random juxtaposition of words, meaning there are some rules behind the two word utterances that a child speaks, and it's not just a combination of random words. Children have simple rules that they use to generate two word utterances: the pivot P and the open X class of words. Each pair of words selects one from a small set of words called pivots that occur in many utterances. The pivot class consists of words that occur frequently and in fixed positions, which can be at the end or the beginning of the enunciation. He also hypothesized that early two word combinations were comprised of either a type 1 pivot, occurring at the beginning of an utterance, followed by an open class word, or an open class word followed by a type 2 pivot, occurring at the end of the sentence or utterance. For example, with these three phrases, more walk, more cereal, and more fish, the type 1 pivot is the word more, occurring at the beginning of an utterance, and it's pretty consistent. While the open class word, the words walk, cereal, and fish, are at the end of the utterance and as well can be replaced. Going back to this, according to Brain, this rule is one of the most fundamental bases of the internal rules of grammar. Additionally, for the two word stage, Brown and his colleagues noted that adults expand children's utterances. If one assumes that adult expansions are generally accurate interpretations of the child's utterance, then pivot open grammars are inadequate because they underestimate the child's knowledge. For example, Lois Bloom showed that when one attended to context the utterance mommy suck used by her child in two different ways. So, for example, when a child says the term mommy suck, it might be that the child is asking his mother for the sock, or it could be that he is referring to a sock that his mother owned. Moving on to the telegraphic stage occurring at 24 to 30 months. So this is similar to what is seen in a telegram wherein there are more than two words in a sentence or in an utterance, but it still sounds quite incomplete and choppy. It consists of many three and four word sentences, and the child begins to understand the links between words and objects. So now, the utterances that the children create are grammatically correct. So it is more likely to retain content words and function words. Content words being nouns, verbs, and adjectives that refer to real things, and function words being pronouns, prepositions, and auxiliary verbs. This is also where overgeneralizations in children's speech occurs, which refers to the errors that children make when they allocate their inflections. We will be talking about this in greater detail in the next couple of slides. So, from 50 words in the past stage, now a child has their vocabulary expanded to 13,000 words, and they have begun incorporating plurals, combining words, and attempts at using tenses. This is where rapid development begins, which paves the way for the second main stage of syntactic development: stages in development of transitions. Let's proceed. For stage 4, occurring at 36 to 42 months, this includes the acquisition of irregular past tense words, adding s to possessives, the proper use of to be verbs such as the right use of are and is. And in this fifth stage, at 40 to 46 months, this includes the understanding of articles, the regular past tense, which involves adding ed, and third person regular present tense. He laughs, they cried, things like that. Reveals the child's understanding of the rules as another automatically learned phenomenon. For example, a toddler will often say "goed" or "foots" before he says "went" or "feet." So now they're experimenting and steadily improving their grammar. Now, this is the stage 6, which happens at 42 to 52 months. This involves the usage of contractions such as I'm and your. Usage of third person irregular present tense is also occurring at this stage, such as she has, and more complicated uses of to be words, such as combining them with other verbs and forming contractions. Bowen believes that kids have usually mastered all these stages by 52 months, and at the age of 4 should be able to form around 4 to 5 sentences. This stage is also the final stage of language development, which deeply reflects the growth of a child's utterances and its increasing closeness to adult language standards. The sub-patterns in this stage include the acquisition of negatives, questions, and other sentence elements like verb linking, regular and irregular past tenses, and compound and complex sentence forms. Between the ages of 8 and 10, it is believed that the acquisition of adult language patterns is generally complete. Now let's move on to how children learn how to express negation. This is strong evidence that shows the grammar building of children, such as the alarming frequency of the times that they use no in their speech. However, they are not yet aware of the morphologically complex nature of words like don't, can't, and won't in their contractions. So, while they learn how to use these, they do not fully understand yet that these words, for example, the word don't is actually a combination of do not, can't, cannot, and won't, will not. But as they slowly refine their use of negation, they gradually learn how to become closer when it comes to learning adult grammar. Here are a few examples. First, the child starts off by adding no to the beginning or end of the sentence when they want to deny something, like, no wants some food. No, the sun is shining. Wear mitten, no. And in the second stage, they insert a negative element. He no bite you. I no want envelope. That no fish school. So it's becoming more complex. In the last stage, they insert a negative element and include an auxiliary. I don't want no food. I did it. No, it isn't. I can't see you. So as you can see, the development is interesting and it's becoming more of a complete thought. Of course, after expressing negation, a child also learns along the process to to learn how to ask questions, such as interrogatives. The acquisition of interrogatives is also a systematic business that seems to proceed through some regular stages. So, at first, children seem to ask questions by using rising intonation, which basically refers to the pitch, like the rising pitch at the end of their words, such as, more milk? Mommy, go? At around the age of 3, children start using auxiliaries in yes no questions and then proceeding to put them in the proper order. Can I have more? But at this point, they still lack knowledge on adult order when it comes to WH questions. So they usually use declarative order. An example of this in action is when a child says, Mommy, why you are mad? Instead of saying, Mommy, why are you mad? Because they are used to the declarative order. They're still learning. Now, this reflects the process of children going through stages of grammar development and not just imitating what they hear, because I'm sure that the adults around them use the proper order in asking WH questions. So, why are they not able to do the same yet? Why are they still using the declarative order instead of following what they hear? Exactly proves the point that children go through their own grammar development. They're the ones that are organizing the words by themselves and slowly learning as they grow their grammatical knowledge, evidenced in question formation. For example, external question marker, I will read the examples. In the first stage, sit chair, I ride train, who that? Where milk go? And in the stage 2, it becomes more complex. Does the kitty stand up? Did mommy pinch her finger? And in the third stage, what did you do? As you can see, it's still incorrect, but that's because they're applying different rules in grammar and trying to learn. Moving on to one of the most important things, which is the overgeneralizations, something that I've touched on a little earlier. This refers to the phenomenon where one extends one rule to cover instances to which that rule does not apply. It is a systematic way that children create and unconsciously use, and here appears the greater opposition to the idea of imitation. It reflects their creativity. Not simply random, children overgeneralize among reasonable semantic grounds. Like, for example, the examples that I gave earlier, wherein they underutilize or overutilize a certain word, they use a word to represent other things that are not included in the definition of that thing, such as using the word cat to refer to squirrels, cats, and other creatures that have pointy ears or something, or only using the word teddy with their teddy bear and nothing else. So the inflection S to mark plurality is seen to be added to irregular verbs. So this is also another example of overgeneralizations like sheep, sheeps, or the inflection ed to mark past tense is seen to be added to irregular verbs like find being finded, because that's how they learned how to apply the word ed, although it's still incorrect. Why this is important is that it again points to the fact that kids are acquiring language through building a grammar and not through simple rote memorization. Like the thing that I mentioned earlier. They're not just memorizing and copying what they hear, they themselves are figuring it out. And that makes it impressive. Let's now define the grammar module and mental dictionary. According to Steven Pinker's model, presented in Words and Rules, all normal human brains come primed for language acquisition. They have an innate ability to memorize vocabulary, internalize rules regarding their native languages, grammar and syntax, and remember irregular forms. So we have all that natural capability right there in our brain from the moment we are born, according to his model. Of course, children's mental dictionaries expand rapidly as they acquire new vocabulary and learn new idioms and expressions. Likewise, The grammar modules quickly learn and apply the proper rules of the language. The errors adults notice arise when one of the two situations occurs. Either the grammar module fails to supply the proper rule, or the mental dictionary fails to supply the proper word. Now we can see how interconnected really the grammar module and mental dictionary is to the syntactic development of children and their speech, as well as how important these two things are when it comes to learning a language. For this last part, I would love to cite the reference that I used for this report, for it would not have been possible without the guidance and information provided by this reference. Thank you so much for listening to my report, and I hope you learned a lot today. And I hope that it has also made you reflect on how interesting and amazing the development of of speech is, especially when it comes to children. And yeah, I hope it left you with a lot of lasting impressions and lessons. And that's all for today. Have a nice day.